I think, learning how to find healthier items is so important. So I would say first and foremost, when we're looking at materials, to bring in like paint stains, anything like that, even furniture, I suppose, anything that has a very vague term that would be greenwashing, right? So it says like eco-friendly, that doesn't mean healthy.
Mm.
And so sometimes when I see those things without proof to like back up these claims, it, just has like the word kind of plastered all over it, that gives me pause to dive a little deeper.
Welcome to Design with Impact, the podcast for interior designers who want to create beautiful, healthy spaces with intention and purpose. I'm Alex, interior designer, mom, entrepreneur, and educator, and I am truly passionate about sustainability. After seeing the amount of waste our industry creates and learning how everyday materials can impact our health, I completely changed the way I approach design. And now I want to help more designers do the same. Each week, through solo episodes and conversations with industry experts, we'll explore sustainable materials, healthier homes, and circular design, along with practical strategies to reduce waste, grow a sustainable business, and market your work with intention, so you can create real impact without sacrificing aesthetics or profitability. Because sustainability isn't optional, it's the future of design. Welcome to the Design with Impact podcast. I'm your host, Alex Shield, and today we're going to be speaking with Amanda Klecker. Amanda is a building biology practitioner and healthy home expert who helps families reduce toxins and create safer, more supporting living environments. As the founder of Healthy House on the Block, she provides research-backed guidance on indoor air quality, chemical exposures, and practical ways to care for a home with health in mind. Her work is rooted in the belief that every family deserves a home that truly supports wellness. Hi, Amanda. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Alex. I'm excited to be here.
So tell us, what is building biology and how does this differ from green building or sustainability? And how did you get started in this industry?
It's a really great question. So building biology is different, obviously, than sustainability. It does have some of the same ideas that are within this practice. However, building biology looks at the home as a whole and how all of the systems work together. It really focuses on the breathability of the home so that we don't have toxins that can become concentrated inside the home because there is not enough ventilation, but also we're working on keeping humidity levels very balanced throughout the home. It does bring in some ideas of sustainability because obviously a lot of the materials that we're going to utilize are more natural. However, it doesn't just focus on sustainability. There's all of these overarching ideas of indoor air quality and humidity control that go along with that. It also brings in some practices with EMFs and reducing EMFs within the home. That's another building biology principle. It's basically, a lot of it was used originally for like builders, but we have a lot of information about homes, how they work over the past, however many years that we've been building homes. And you can really utilize these principles in an existing home to make it healthier. I have always had a love of homes, and it's something that I've been interested in kind of my whole life. But I knew I didn't want to do real estate. And so I sat and mulled with it. I also really love the idea of natural wellness. So how can
Mm.
we, prevent disease rather than just treat it? And building biology really is these two ideas put together. It's homes, but it's also how can we use our homes as a third skin, something that protects us and can prevent illness and disease rather than just kind of putting a Band-Aid on things and fixing it down the road.
I love that. I don't think people really understand how your home can affect your health. So we're going to get into some of that. Um, EMFs, also for anybody listening, EMFs are electromagnetic frequencies, and we will get into that a little bit later as well. So, why should interior designers care then about building biology, and what impact could designers have on creating healthier spaces?
Yeah, I think designers have a really unique opportunity because they're working with someone who is already they're ready to make changes. They're
Mm.
ready to bring in new items or new materials because they'll be renovating a space. And anytime we have the opportunity to bring something new into our space, we have the opportunity to get out something that's already in the space that could be toxic. So it's kind of twofold. You're bringing in something new that will have fewer toxins, that is a healthier option, that maybe improves indoor air quality. But then we're also taking out something that's toxic. So you're really improving the health of the home in a big way. And I think anytime anyone's ready to even do like a small project, we just have that opportunity to bring something healthier in. Um, and it's amazing how quickly you can change your indoor environment by taking something toxic out. One big example is like carpet. If you were to take carpet out of a home and instead put in smooth surface flooring, you're taking a huge source of chemical toxins, biological toxins like mold out of the house and putting in something that's maybe a low toxin smooth surface. You've just like drastically improved the health of the home because of that surface area
Wow.
that carpet can be in the house. So it's a great opportunity when a designer comes in because
Hmm.
they can really help guide those decisions with the homeowner.
Okay, so our air quality is often worse indoors than outdoors. So there are studies that show that air quality can be 2 to 5 times worse than outdoor air quality
Yeah.
indoors. So, what are the most common indoor air toxins that we find in our homes, and how does this affect our health?
Yeah. And I think this has actually changed recently with just more research that's been done. A lot of times, people will say VOCs. VOCs and formaldehyde kind of go hand in hand. Any something that's off-gassing. I would say that's still probably really high. But now we're seeing that every home has microplastics in it. It's
Mm,
in the dust. And when it's in our dust, it's also in our air because we move, we have pets, we have kids, we have forced air, furnaces and air conditioners in our home that are pushing all of these particles around. So I would say microplastics is now a really big toxin that we're finding in homes. And also like PFAS from different textiles or items that, have maybe like a couch that was treated with something and the tiny little particles are now ending up in the dust again, that's getting into our air. So I would say those three are the big chemical um, toxins that we're seeing in a house. So, one side of it is off gassing, and that's a gas in the air. And the other two are really particles and like particulate matter that ends up in our air as we move around our house. And then, on the other side of that, sometimes we do talk about mold, and that can be very specific. I think every house has mold. Um, and yes, it is a toxin. It's not necessarily a chemical toxin. We consider it a biological toxin. But that's pretty prevalent in homes as well.
mm. So then, how does our you mentioned rugs before, but how does furniture and cabinetry and flooring, how did all of these furniture and finishes affect our indoor air quality?
Yeah, that's a great question because they're all a little bit different. I mean, cabinets are not the same thing as your furniture. So I would say that is what kind of brings, when we start talking about indoor air quality, we're talking about multiple aspects of it. So cabinets, a lot of times it is the off-gassing piece of it. A lot of cabinets are made from plywood and more of like a manufacturer, like a manufactured wood,
Like an MDF?
builder grade, so it would have formaldehyde in it.
Mm,
You can get cabinets that have no added formaldehyde, but that's something that you would probably have to seek out. Someone's not just,
hmm
putting those in because they're going to be more expensive, and it's probably harder to source those materials.
hmm
So cabinets off gas, even the finishes on the cabinet. So if they're stained, if they're painted, that can also off gas into the air. Things like furniture, there is some off gassing with the foam. So any sort of foam that's petroleum based, which is pretty typical for couches, chairs,
Everything
anything.
upholstered. Yeah.
Anything
Right.
upholstered, exactly.
Yeah.
Anything that's soft and cushy that we're sitting on, that will off gas. But then Couches and upholstered furnitures also have this other piece where every time you sit on it or there's any sort of friction, all the tiny little particles are ending up in our dust, in our air. And those particles can contain things like flame retardants, PFAS, if it has been like stain treated or treated to be water resistant. Formaldehyde can be added in the treatments as well if it's something that's like wrinkle free or it's like, we don't want anything penetrating that surface. And so that's the other part of those toxins. Countertops don't necessarily have anything that like could become dislodged. That's more
Mm,
of something in textiles, but it all adds up and ends up in our air. And unless you have, some sort of ventilation system that's very, very efficient, you're probably not getting all of those tiny little particles out of the air. And VOCs and formaldehyde can be very tricky to get out of the air
mm,
because they're a gas. There are ways to do it and there's ways to minimize it, but it's very hard to eliminate it.
mm-hmm, for sure. So I've heard you speak many times. We've had different conversations as well, you and I. And ultimately, you want to be sweeping and dusting and trying to
Yeah.
clean your house as much as possible. So don't overwhelm yourself that you need to change out all your furniture.
Yes.
But I think when we are sourcing furniture for our clients, we can be looking for better, healthier options.
Yeah. I
Um,
think that that's a great point. It's not always about replacing something, but when you're ready, let's
mm,
make a healthier decision. Because there are ways to mitigate toxins in any home, and we can do that while we prepare for new items to come in that are healthier.
yeah, for sure. So, what would you say? Are there any red flags, I guess I should say? Are there any red flags that designers can look out for in product labels when they're sourcing for their clients?
Yeah. Yes, there are. And I think, learning how to find healthier items is so important. It's always great when you can find a trusted brand, but sometimes you're working with someone who wants something very specific or even like a different area of the country where you maybe can't get a particular brand. So I would say first and foremost, when we're looking at like materials, to bring in like paint stains, anything like that, even furniture, I suppose. Anything that has a very vague term that would be greenwashing, right? So it says like eco-friendly. That doesn't mean healthy.
Mm,
And so sometimes when I see those things without proof to like back up these claims, it just has like the word kind of plastered all over it. That gives me pause to dive a little deeper. Let's look more into this product. Maybe let's get um some sort of data sheet, right, for this material so I can really look at it. It doesn't mean it's a no, but it does mean that we have to do more research. Anything, furniture wise that you're getting that is stain resistant or water repellent, that is usually a red flag term because
mm,
there typically aren't a lot of healthy options for making something stain resistant or repelling water. Usually that's done with some sort of chemical, PFAS, formaldehyde, um, something along those lines. We don't want to bring that in if we don't have to. And then I would say, anything that has flame retardants too. That's another chemical that we can avoid in certain products. If it does, say on the label that it has flame retardants, that's something I would look into further to see what type of flame retardants. Is it naturally flame resistant or did they add chemical flame retardants? Um, and then I think the last one would be like when we're starting to look at VOCs, you can usually find a data sheet. Anything that has VOCs over like 10 would be a hard no, right? And then, like so there's, like, ranges. So anything that's, like, 0 to 2, that would be considered, like, low. There's also, like, even ultra low VOCs, and I would try to stay in that realm if you can't do completely 0 VOCs. So that's something to look at as well, and I think anything that's higher than a 10 is, like, absolutely not, I cannot bring this in the house. That's gonna be off-gassing, a lot for a while.
Okay, so when you're building a healthy home, we can look at all of these elements and try and put everything together. But ultimately, if we are renovating, if there are existing things already in the home, what can we do in terms of ventilation. Is there specific ways we can upgrade ventilation in a home to help filter out these toxins?
Yeah. I mean, there's different levels you could do too. So if you're like, someone's, I want to do something myself, how can I improve ventilation? That would start with getting a high quality filter for your forced air furnace or for your air conditioner, whatever you might have in your space. And that would be something that has a high MERV rating. We know that the higher the MERV, the tighter the weave of the furnace filter, that means the more it's catching. It also means you need to be replacing it more. So you have to do a little work with it. And I know a lot of HVAC installers will say, no, you really don't want a high MERV. You can your system can handle it. You need to be replacing it a lot more because anytime we're blocking airflow, like that filter is getting like clogged, then we are causing problems. But a MERV 12 is great. Something that has carbon woven in it will also help reduce those VOCs. So the carbon will remove VOCs that are in vapor. So if you're, so any VOCs that are in some of the vapor in your air. So if you have, humid, you have a level of humidity in your air, right? It will pull those out, and the filter traps those VOCs. So you can reduce it. You can't, get rid of everything, but you could definitely reduce it. So that's like the first step. But then if we're going to go even further, say now we're kind of thinking we want to do some sort of project, adding some sort of air exchanger, HRV, ERV, whatever is appropriate for your climate, is an amazing tool. This is a box that basically connects to your furnace or your air that's going, your ductwork. It has a filter, a twofold filter that brings air in from outside, filters it, right? So it pulls out particulate matter, dander, mold spores, anything that's outside, allergens, and it pushes it then through your vents. And then it has another outtake pipe where it pulls your air out of your house. So basically you're getting full air exchanges in your house consistently. I would say that is one of the best tools for indoor air quality when you're looking to add something to your current system.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to have to get one of those.
I know. I mean, and I would say new homes being built, a lot of them will have this. Like, I live in the Twin Cities, so in Minnesota, it is standard. If you have a new build, that is an automatic. It has to be put in. I think
Okay.
Colorado might be the same way, but then other states you have to like kind of like make sure they're putting this in, but it is something that you can still add retroactively.
Okay. Okay. Love that. So
Yeah.
then, speaking of new builds, what mistakes do you see designers make when they're designing new builds or remodels?
Yeah. Um, so designers specifically, I would say a lot of it is going to be those mistakes are in the bathrooms. Maybe
Mm,
having areas where moisture can get trapped instead of going like out a fan, or even like the fan placement not being where the moisture is. So it could be even having like a little space where moisture can come out through a shower door, but then not having the fan in the right spot. And then
mm,
also, could be like the material that's being used in the bathroom. Wallpaper in the bathroom is a terrible idea, but a lot of, it makes the bathroom pretty. And so I see it a lot when I go in homes, and it's like, no, this literally will just like hold on to moisture. You're going to have mold potentially growing behind it. And so I would say those are like the bathroom is the big spot. When we look beyond designers and we're talking about like maybe like architecture, then I think we look at like problems with like the roof line, like having way too many like peaks and valleys. The simpler, usually the better.
mm.
And so making sure that we have, obviously spots to pull moisture out of the house and areas where we can have air flowing and it's not getting trapped, I think is the key.
So it's interesting that you mentioned wallpaper because, yes, wallpaper is beautiful in a bathroom. It's not the healthiest or the most eco friendly choice in general.
Okay. Yeah.
But when I was a new designer starting out, I had seen this. I had seen designers put wallpaper in bathrooms with showers and baths. And I was curious and I thought, well, it's paper. It's probably not really durable. But you can get wallpaper rated specifically for that, for humid areas. And essentially it's PVC. So not a healthy
So
option
yeah.
anyway. Okay, but I didn't know that mold could actually humidity could get trapped in there and mold could grow. So that's also super interesting. So it's not something that's going to last. You're going to have to take it down and remediate for the mold. So,
Yeah, well, and I think, the nice thing is not the nice thing. I mean, nothing about mold is nice, but when it's when it's behind wallpaper, probably it's more of like a surface thing, but you might have to remove some of that drywall
mm,
in order to really clean that space. So,
yeah.
it depends. I would say in bathrooms a lot of times, like if I see mold where it's like vaulted ceilings in bathrooms are another area I see tons of mold growth. It's
Mm,
typically a surface mold because they've painted the walls with an appropriate paint that is moisture resistant. So you could actually wipe the mold off. The problem is, if you don't fix the problem, that's a constant thing that you're dealing with and you're
mm,
constantly exposed to. So it's the same idea behind wallpaper. It might not necessarily be like colonizing, but it's just still getting trapped and you're still
mm.
exposed to it, unfortunately.
Okay. So then, because we're on the topic of mold, how does the way that we design a space potentially contribute to mold issues?
Yeah, I think that goes back to really paying attention to how we are removing moisture. So, kitchens, bathrooms, laundry rooms, these are great spaces to really pay attention to this because we're creating so much moisture in these spaces. So like laundry rooms, if like say we're adding a main floor laundry and we're putting it in a little like closet with a pocket door and we're just closing it off. Well, that's a lot of moisture that can get trapped in there. We need to be adding some sort of venting to pull that moisture out of that space. And the same goes for like a kitchen. So I would say I go in kitchens all the time where we're putting, say they're like redoing the kitchen, putting in a gas stove, and we're putting some sort of hood range above it that's just recirculating the air. Well, that's allowing a lot of moisture to sit in this kitchen. We need one that actually pulls the moisture out of the house. And so I think designing with the intent in bathrooms that it is a completely wet space. So like designing it like this is a wet room. How can we make sure that any water that's in this space can get dried up, not absorbed right into
Mm,
or leaking into areas where like tile can have like grout cracks. You'd be surprised how much water can actually
mm,
leak through that. And I think maybe that's another thing that maybe designers could really focus on is the bigger the tile, the less grout, the less leaking we have. And
mm.
so that's a huge part of it too. One of the great things that I think has come, I'm not a designer, so I don't know actually what's super trendy, but like the huge panels that go in
The big
showers,
slabs.
those are
Yeah.
amazing.
Love
I know
those.
that, I mean, they're beautiful, but they're also protecting what's behind there in
Mm,
a much more efficient way than say like I mean, we have a bathroom upstairs. Our house was built in the early 90s. It still has those tiny little like tiles and it's like anytime there's a little like crack, you're in there like filling it in. Um, you know, mildew likes to grow in those and so if it's not sealed, that's a whole nother story. So I would say the less grout you need, the healthier the bathroom space
mm.
is too.
Okay. That is super interesting. I never thought about those little cracks as a problem, but all right. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So then maybe this answers part of this question, but are there any specific design details that increase a moisture risk? I think you touched on a lot of this in
Yeah.
bathrooms. Yeah.
Um I mean, I would say, like, when we're adding anytime there's, like, wood in a bathroom,
Mm,
like, say it's, like I think it's fine to have it in there, but the conversation needs to be had that this wood needs to be maintained sealed, because it's such a humid space.
mm,
And so I think, fan placement is a huge one, making sure that it is somewhere that's actually pulling moisture out of the space, making sure that we have tile that maybe is in bigger
hmm
slabs. And then even like adding silicone and caulking around things like trim in a bathroom because moisture
Mm,
can seep down behind it. So again, it's kind of like anytime you can just do tile in a bathroom, I think you're doing yourself a favor,
mm,
because anything else really can contribute to issues.
mhm. Have you seen, I don't know if it was like the 60s, the 50s, or the 60s, like those bathrooms with carpet?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And
Yeah.
even like, okay, even like homes that were not built that long ago, people have had like carpet put in like half of it, right? Because they don't want to stand in front of their sink on a tile floor. They want
Okay.
carpet. And I'm just always like, oh my gosh, like, yes, please avoid carpet. Do not put carpet in the bathroom. I actually think that carpet anywhere in a house, if you can get away with smooth surface flooring, you're doing yourself a huge favor. Because there's so many options that are healthy, right?
Mhm.
And also carpet holds on to dust, holds on to mold, holds on to moisture. And so anywhere we can replace that in a house is, I think, a great step towards a healthier space.
Okay. So, what about clients who have chemical sensitivities or autoimmune conditions? How could we approach this as an interior designer? Is there anything
Yeah.
specific we need to look for?
I think when you're working with someone who already has sensitivities in some way, shape, or form, or maybe there's multiple people in the house, you have to consider the person who's the most vulnerable and work from that spot. So, what affects me might not affect you in terms of like, say, we're looking at like specific chemicals, but I'm highly sensitive to mold, and mold doesn't seem to really be a huge issue for your body. So, there's like it's like a barometer that we're going to use that person as, right? So, if they're very sensitive, if there's someone who's very sensitive to mold, then that really needs to be our focus in this house. How are we creating a space where we are minimizing leaks? We're minimizing potential for condensation on, windows or bathroom walls. We're minimizing, any sort of high levels of moisture. And if it's someone who maybe has chemical sensitivities where, I mean, you kind of know, like, they can smell like anything that comes into the house. It gives them a headache. They are so sensitive to it, any sort of VOC or formaldehyde, then that needs to be the focus. And sometimes you can kind of meet somewhere in the middle if it's someone who's just wanting, they just really want their house to be healthier. But when they have those actual sensitivities, I think it's even worth it to mention it to subcontractors,
Mm,
because I do think that it gives them kind of some insight into why you're asking for very specific things. You have other contractors coming in. We're asking them to clean up the space consistently, right? We're asking them to use negative pressure fans so that they're pulling all the dust out. If they just think that's just you being extra, they might not be so inclined to do it. But if you're like telling them, like, hey, this family, they have some health issues where we really need to keep this space very clean so that we're not allowing toxins that are unnecessary in the space. Sometimes I think that's received a little more like
mhm.
just a little better by a
Yeah.
subcontractor than just kind of asking for it. But I think having protocols in place for anybody who's going to be in the house to increase ventilation, reduce any sort of toxin coming in from cutting materials, or choosing like healthier products and materials, say like choosing a grout that's not going to take forever to cure. We want something that's quick dry, or using like a stain that is not going to be off gassing, things like that. Um, I think you get to kind of be the advocate for your
Mm.
clients.
So it's interesting because there's the whole renovation process. So you're talking about keeping things clean and sort of maybe letting things off gas before the people come back home and all
Yeah.
of that in the ventilation. And then there's the finishes that are going to be in the home that are going to continuously off gas or um, break down into particles in our dust. So it's interesting because there's more than one phase of the project where this is
Yeah.
going to be important, especially for somebody with chemical sensitivities. And I think you're right when the way you are working with your contractor is really important too, and just ensuring that they know that your client has chemical sensitivities, and it's um not everybody has the same level of sensitivity. So just really important to communicate that to the team that you're working with.
Yeah, and I think taking each of those phases as I mean, like, you almost have to kind of play a different role in each of those phases.
mm,
So that's a really it's true of, like, probably any project, you
yep,
know,
no, for
like,
sure.
that there's and then even too, like, in those phases is the demolition. That has to be done in a healthier way too.
Yeah,
So I think as long as, when you're working with someone who has chemical sensitivities, like, having that it as the filter, the lens that you're
yeah,
looking through for each of those phases should set you up for success with them.
yeah. I love that. That's a good way of looking at it. Um, okay. So let's go back to EMFs. So electromagnetic frequencies. So
Mhm.
what are these
Yeah.
and how does this affect us and why does this matter?
Yeah. So, I mean, EMFs are everywhere. They're actually outside, but they're at a lower frequency because it's nature. But inside, we obviously have homes with electricity. And so they are truly being emitted from anything that is electrical. Obviously, there are bigger sources. So, like transformers of any kind, whether it's outside your home or maybe you have like a junction box that is providing power to multiple areas of your house. Those are going to be higher sources. Refrigerators are higher sources. Air conditioners are higher sources. EMFs, it's like you can't see it. It's in your house. It's the waves that are, in your home all the time. And anytime you turn something on, that level goes up. And you can have higher EMFs from like your wiring if it's not shielded. And it's impacting our health in a way that I think we're learning more and more about. So I would say even 5 years ago, there was very little information out there that was actually scientific. It was just kind of more opinion based. But now we're finding that these EMFs are interrupting sleep. They are kind of impacting the nervous system in a way that we're just kind of on all the time. And it does pair with blue light. So I'm sure like that's something that, designers do a lot with lights that the LEDs that have that blue light base, that's part of it as well. But different than EMFs because that's visual where it's impacting our nervous system, our circadian rhythm through our eyes. Those are impacting our body just because we're around them. And it's causing like higher levels of cortisol. It especially is impactful to children. So EMFs can cause a number of health impacts. We're finding out more and more. It is being studied more. It used to be more opinion based. I think we're heading towards like more research. Sleep disturbances are a huge one. It's impacting our circadian rhythm. It's impacting the stress levels and our nervous system because we were created to be outside in the world, right? That's how our bodies were created to be around very low levels of EMFs and energy. And when we come into our homes, that energy is all the time. The EMFs are all the time. When you're outside, you think about it and it's like, okay, well, the sun goes down, the moon comes up. There's like a cycle. In your home, there's not a cycle. It's just consistent all the time. And so we can minimize our exposure to EMFs multiple ways. I think, there's some good information out there that the closer you are to a source, the higher it is. So as you distance yourself and give yourself space, the better it is for your body. This also comes into play at night. And I think that's where we can really focus on reducing our EMF exposure is in the evening. Because we can, give our bodies a break while we're sleeping at least. And that hopefully is a 7 to 8 hour chunk of time where we are away from that. And it gives our body a chance to kind of reset and start again.
Hmm. So when we're talking about EMFs in our home, there's our Wi-Fi that's constantly going, and there's also charging stations. So a lot of people charge their phones in their bedroom on their
Yes.
nightstand.
I know.
Where should we be charging our phones, Amanda?
Okay,
Not
well,
there.
I will even like be the first to admit like I do not charge my phone next to my bed. My husband does. And that is like
Okay.
he has to have it there. It's his alarm. Like I'm not gonna even fight him on that. If he wants to do that, fine. So I totally understand. You just focus on like yourself and just anyone else, like just keep giving them the information. If you can charge it out of your bedroom, that's the best. So we have a primary bedroom and primary bathroom in our house. So I can charge my phone in the bathroom. And so that gives me, there's a wall, there's probably 8 feet before my bed. And really what we want to focus on is our head and our brain and like that space of where we're sleeping. Um, so even if you had it on the other side of the room, it's okay. I would say out of your room is best, but then let's just try to get it as far away from your sleeping space as possible. And I would say wireless charging is probably like worse than the one that plugs in.
Okay. What about baby monitors? Because this is something that I was concerned about when I was designing my son's nursery about 5 years ago now. My first son, I had no idea. My second son, I was starting to learn about, the toxins in materials and furnitures, and I was also learning a little bit about EMFs. And so I was, first of all, I mean, you shouldn't have your baby monitor too close to the crib because you don't want the baby to, if there's a cord, you don't want them to pull on the cord or get stuck in the
Right.
cord. But also for EMF purposes, is there a recommendation as to how far the monitor should be from the crib, from the baby?
Yeah. And I think, you can always test if you are willing to purchase an inexpensive EMF meter, you can see when it drops off. And I would say it depends what type of monitor you have. So if
Mm,
you have a monitor that uses Wi-Fi in your home, unfortunately, that's going to be harder to mitigate with distance because it's using Wi-Fi. If you have one that's like on and typically, the only ones that wouldn't work on Wi-Fi would be just audio, and those work
okay.
more like a cordless phone. And so those we would put, on the other side of the room. But I do honestly totally understand families that have to have a video monitor for whatever reason. Could be like medical, could be just behavioral, like they need to have that in there. And so then I would say try to put it as far away from the crib as possible. Can you put it on the other side of the room? That's your best bet. And then having it on a setting where it is only notifying you when there's sound is also good because then it typically is not transmitting all night long.
Okay.
So there's some of that. I have heard of people who like hardwire them with like an
Mm,
ethernet.
yeah.
Unless your home is already wired for that, I would say that could get pretty tricky. And so
Okay.
really the best thing is distance. And if you can do just audio, that's going to be better too.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
So every project has a budget that needs to be respected. What would you say would be the main priorities if we want to create a healthy home for our clients?
Yeah. I think the best thing you can do is look at what is going to cover the most surface area. And a
Mm,
lot of times that's flooring. When you start looking at flooring around your house, and specifically if they have carpet, I think switching that over to a smooth surface flooring, that could make a huge impact on the health of the space. Because again, like we talked about in the beginning, it's taking out something that's very toxic and bringing in something that is not going to hold on to biological toxins, is not going to increase the humidity inside, but is also a low toxin material. So we're improving it in two ways. Um, I would say anytime you can choose a material that is more natural, so solid wood, stone, or even like when we talk about textiles, avoiding synthetic textiles, which can be really
mm,
hard. I think it can actually have a huge impact on the space because we are seeing so many like toxins from our fabrics and our textiles and our carpets in our dust that we're ingesting, kids are ingesting, we're breathing it in. It's kind of ending up just around our entire space. So anytime you can go with a more natural textile, a more natural material, obviously that's going to be best. And then I would say, cost effective wise, going with a zero VOC paint,
Mm.
one that doesn't have toxins, because I'm guessing most, if not all, projects that designers are doing involves paint of some kind. And so using that as an opportunity to bring in something that is completely toxin free, usually it's not that much more expensive to go with a completely toxin free paint compared to just, a builder grade, more high quality paint.
Okay. So flooring is your biggest one, biggest surface area. Choose natural materials and zero VOC paints. Because
Yeah,
that's another one. Another big surface area is the walls, right? Floors and also
exactly.
love that.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a rapid fire question for you.
Okay.
What is one material that you would never put in your own home?
Ooh. Wow. I mean, I think anything that has plastic. I would like, because I'm trying to think like, not even doing like a huge project, but anything like a PVC vinyl, if I could avoid that, like bringing something new in, that's always something that I'm like, no, I'm not bringing that into my house because it off gases. And honestly, like, it's not good for our world. Like, it's probably not gonna be something that's like a buy it for life. That's another thing that we really try to focus on in our house is like, what can we buy that's gonna I'm gonna like it for the next 25 years, maybe not
Mm,
that long. But you know what I mean? Because every time we switch something out in our home or we're like changing something, that's more in a landfill. So I would say any type of like PVC vinyl, like, blech.
I'm with you on that. That would have been my answer too,
Okay.
PVC. Okay. So before we go,
Mhm.
you have something for our listeners. You have an ebook. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. Yes, I have a free ebook on my website. It really kind of takes you down a really easy path to start making your house healthier. I have it kind of broken down into steps, very, very tangible. I'm someone who likes a checklist and I want to be able to literally just go in and like get my stuff done. So I want someone to outline it for me. And that's what I've done with this. And so it is really based on those 25 building biology principles to make your house healthier without doing a huge overhaul. Because we're all busy. We want to kind of jump in and do these things as we can, not spending a weekend doing a whole project. These are little things that you can do throughout your house to really get toxins out and improve your ventilation and reduce your humidity.
Okay, love that. So, you're going to send me the link. I'm going to add it in the show notes below so people can download it. Thank you so much for joining me. It was
Thank
so great chatting
you.
with you. Can you just tell us where we can find you?
Yes, absolutely. So my website is where you can contact me. I have a new blog post every week. It's healthyhouseontheblock.com. I have lots of free downloads on there. Social media, like I'm on Instagram a lot. That's Healthy House on the Block as well. And then my YouTube channel is Healthy House on the Block. And there's new long form, like long videos every week to really walk you through a space. And then I put a couple short ones up every week as well. So lots of information that you can, absorb and hopefully lots of things you can add to your own space.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. It was so fun.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for listening. If you have been enjoying these conversations, I would love for you to grab the Sustainable Design Starter Kit. This kit will help you to quickly and confidently implement sustainability in your business through a materials cheat sheet, checklists, and client-ready scripts. This kit will help you design more sustainably without the overwhelm. You can find the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to follow the podcast, share this episode with another designer so we can make an even bigger impact, and leave a review so more designers can find this podcast and we can continue to grow this community. Also, I challenge you to take one sustainable practice from this episode and incorporate it in your business or your next project. And I want to know what it is. Send me a DM over on Instagram at designwithimpact_. I would love to hear from you. Thank you for being here.